Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. In this episode, Jasdeep shares his winding path from Argentina around the globe for work and school. Listen to why he attended undergrad in the US, and then why he went to the UK for a master's. How he ended up taking his time to make sure he got a high GMAT score to attend a top business school in Europe, and how he ended up back in Argentina working at a private equity fund. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining the Wall Street Oasis podcast, Jasdeep.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for having me.
So it would be great if you could just give the listeners a short summary of your background.
Sure. So I'm from Argentina, Buenos Aires. I went to my undergrad in the US. I completed my degree in 3 years out of 4 years, played D1 soccer, and studied business administration. After my graduation, I went and pursued a master's in business from the UK to get international exposure, as well as a superior degree in terms of master's. And then I started work. I came back to Buenos Aires. I worked at BDO for 1 year. I knew I needed to study for the GMAT. So I went to India, where I got a job working in a commercial bank in the FIG division, investment banking division. I worked there for 6 years, completed my GMAT, applied to a bunch of business schools, got in, and I went to business school in Spain, Madrid. After completing my business school and my MBA, my master's in business administration from Madrid, I went to Buenos Aires and I got a job at a fund, private equity fund. And since I've been currently employed at a private equity fund, and I've scaled the fund for 4 years now, since almost incorporation of the fund.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so very winding path, very interesting path. I kind of want to start just even before your transition to undergrad in the US. I'd love to hear just, so you're born in Argentina. Were your parents in finance? Why go to the school in the US of all places?
Yes, so I went to an international.
Yeah, so like why not stay? Yeah, why not stay in Argentina and all that?
Yes, so Argentina, I went to an international American school, which is a privileged private school for ambassadors, for sons of CEOs, for daughters of ambassadors, private sector, public sector, 3 or 4 year posting. So I had the privilege to go there, and everybody once they finished their senior year would have the opportunity to go study in the US or Europe. It would all be based on your formation, your credentials, your SAT scores, your TOEFL scores, your transcript, your extracurriculars, and I really wanted to pursue playing D1 soccer, and so my objective was to target a US school, and I got the opportunity to study in the US. I got admitted. I didn't do so well academically in the first few years of my high school, but I got better.
Yeah, so you did better kind of as you went through your international school is like for high school, you mean to prep? It's like a prep school for getting into, either going to Europe or going to the US in Argentina.
Prep school in Argentina, correct.
Yep, okay.
And high school.
And so when you were kind of going through there, you were struggling the first few years. Were you ever thinking like, oh, I like business or I like any of this stuff? Or was like, hey, I just want to go play soccer and I'm going to try to get into the best school I can in the US?
Trying to get into the best school I can in the US. I wasn't targeting Harvard, Stanford, Wharton. I was targeting more like, Boston University, University of Miami, kind of those kinds of universities.
And so, because you ended up at a what I'd call a non-target school. We don't have to name the school, but you did get to play D1 soccer, right? And you were able to finish a 4-year curriculum in 3 years, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
So you pushed yourself pretty hard in those 3 years, it sounds like.
Yes.
Was there a reason why were you in a rush to finish for some reason?
Look, I wasn't, I wanted to escalate my career. I gave my GMAT back in the day, and, I got a 320 or 350. I don't remember my score. That was my score when I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I was like, what is going on. I want to go to a proper school in international context, top ranked schools, so that I could get an appropriate job and kind of get to the best school I could possibly get to. Yeah.
Got it. So you were kind of, trying to get through the schooling so you could go move on to your next school. Was there somebody like in your life, parents, family, friends, people at that university, counselors that were pointing you to this direction? Because I'm looking at your path and I'm like, it is the most probably unique path I've ever seen in all the hundreds of podcasts I've done, in the sense of like diversity of region, diversity of like schools, everything, right? So I can see there's a heavy emphasis on education. And I can see there's a heavy emphasis on international education and like just being global, right? In terms of like, you were in the US, then you were in the UK, then you were in India, then you were in Madrid, right?
Yes.
And even at one point, I think you had told me you had to stop in France. But my point is like, I want to understand a little bit more about like what was driving you. Were there people in your life saying like, this is the path, this is what you should be doing? Was it because your family were they consulates? Were they, in Argentina representing a country or something like that? Or what was the drive behind that desire for such a global education?
The desire was, global education. Look, I've kind of, since my undergrad, I knew I wanted to get into INSEAD. So INSEAD was kind of my top target. A European business school, a 10-month, 12-month program was kind of in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that for that, I needed to prep up for the GMAT. I knew that I needed to get the work experience. I need to be a profile in the top percentiles in terms of formation, distinction, diversity, so on and so forth. And to do that, I knew that I would need a lot of preparation. I would need to, bump up my Excel skills, bump up my documentation skills, and
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So, I mean, so you did the undergrad really fast. You got a bachelor's in business administration, and then you quickly like jumped into a master's in the UK.
Yes. Yes.
So why did you do that? If you like in Seattle was your dream, like, wouldn't you think that was that an MBA?
Yeah. So that was a master's in business. I understand that a standard master's does not have the same return on investment that an MBA does. You go to an MBA, you get certain return on investment. You go to a standard master's program, you get a certain return on investment. But I knew that if in the future I wanted to pursue an MBA, I would need to compress my academic formation into a 3+1 program kind of thing. Graduated a little early, get another geography.
Why did you feel like that? Because your scores weren't as high?
My scores weren't the best.
Do you mind sharing your GMAT? You said something about a 320. Isn't it out of 800?
The GMAT score is out of 800. It ranges from 200 to 800. I initially started with 360. I can't remember what my score was, but I was in the upper bounds. I was in the target range for INSEAD, for European business schools, so on and so forth.
So you're probably close to like 650-ish.
650-ish sounds around, yeah.
Yeah, because like I think, you need to be usually in the 600s to 700. Right? You can be 500, but if you're in the 500s, you need a pretty extraordinary profile otherwise to be admitted, usually.
Yes, and my quant skills were amazing. I got I think a 49 out of 51 on the quant.
Wow. So your verbal that was bringing you down a little bit, but the quant was so strong. But unfortunately, the quant on the GMAT for people listening, even if you have a 49 out of 51, the verbal is the one that can move it more because there's so many Indian engineers taking the exam who are excellent at math that skew that upwards. So it makes it harder to score the verbal grade percentile. Yeah, verbal. So if you get like 90, if you get 90th percentile on both verbal and math, your overall score will be higher than if you get, if you get the same versus like if you get a little bit higher verbal, it'll really boost your overall percentile score. I don't know if you knew that, but anyways, kind of an interesting tidbit. So you're going to get like just a general master's of global business analysis at a UK school because you felt like it would just make you more competitive. Do you feel like it did? Do you feel like you learned a lot there, or was it more like, hey, you're trying to find yourself, you're young still?
No, I think I learned a lot. I definitely focused on school. I
Were you living
definitely,
in London? Is it in London or where were you
it
living?
was in Manchester.
Manchester. Okay.
I was definitely, I got a really good score, almost distinction. So I was not far away. I was class representative. Like I felt like I excelled substantially at that course. I did very well academically.
Okay. So you're finishing there. It's a global financial crisis is hitting.
Yes.
And so what are you thinking at this point? Were you applying for jobs during that Masters of Business? What were you applying for? Where did you strike out? Were you applying like thousands of places? Were you networking? To give us a little bit of flavor, like what was your thought process of like jobs? Because, eventually for these MBA programs, usually they like to see at least a couple of years of like experience before you actually jump in, right?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I was people I was targeting. I was applying to BCG. I was applying to McKinsey. I was applying to consulting. I was applying to JP Morgan. I was applying to Morgan Stanley. I was applying to Goldman Sachs. I was applying to lots of
In
banks.
UK or anywhere?
Usually I'd put geography anywhere, but in the UK was a focus because you see the prime objection of not getting employment. Not only was my work experience, but was my nationality. Because as an international student inside the UK, if I don't have the appropriate work permit, I'm not allowed to work in those kinds of markets.
You had to leave basically if you don't get a job, right? Eventually, because otherwise, well, if you're
Correct.
either a student or you have your visa, right? Your work visa.
Student visa.
You had your student visa, but then if you don't get a job, you have to leave, right? Eventually.
Yes.
So that was the goal. Like, you wanted to stay in London potentially.
My goal wasn't to stay in London. My goal was more to still target that international MBA program that I wanted to create for myself.
Okay, so you had undergrad 3 years. You did this. Was it a 1-year program, the Masters of Business?
Yes.
Okay, 1 year. So you had kind of your 4 years right there, and then I assume you were looking for a full-time job, like your first job at a school at that point.
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me about like that whole process and where you ended up and why?
Yes, so I had to come back home because I couldn't find a job. So I came
Home
back
being
home.
in Buenos Aires?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so you flew back to Argentina, and what are your parents saying at this point? Or your friends?
My parents. I'm kind of taking a 1 or 2 months kind of break at home and figuring out what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, my parents are kind of pushing to see how I can network myself into a job.
Yeah. Were they supportive or were they pushing you hard? Was it like stressful or was it like relaxed?
It's supportive.
That's nice. That's
But
nice.
remember, I had the GMAT. 4 years had completed the formation, but I still, in my mind, I had to give that GMAT test, the aptitude test. So I was gonna start work, but I needed to do a good job on the exam, or else I wasn't gonna make it to a appropriate business school.
Yeah. Okay. So is that what you worked on? You started studying for the GMAT
Yes,
then?
I started studying for the GMAT.
Okay. And then when did you take it, and like, or were you applying to jobs at the same time? Tell us how you got that first job and what it was.
First job is networking. Thanks to a partner at BDO, was a client of my mother's. So family, friends always help. And thanks to the network, I was able to get an interview with a corporate finance position. I was kind of the youngest in the corporate finance team, attractive CV. I spoke English very well for Argentina standard, and I got the job. And I started training up in accounting in an accounting firm inside the corporate finance division.
Awesome. And so how long were you there?
I was there for approximately 9 to 12 months before I flew back to India.
You flew to India?
Flew to India, correct? Yeah.
Okay, so your home was in Argentina. You flew back from the UK there. You started at BDO. Where was that? Where was the BDO?
Buenos Aires.
In Buenos Aires. So you were there for 9 months, but then you said flew back to India. So did you have a house in India too?
Sorry, no. My parents, they're a couple generations from India. They're from they hail from there. So I went to India to continue building my international profile. Needed to focus on the distinction. You don't know what the admissions committee is going to come up with.
No, but you had the job at BDO, and you at that point, did you realize like this is not really what I want to do? Your family had gone back to India, or they were like there temporarily. Was the thought process, I want to go be closer to family? Or was it more like I want more international presence, and that's why you started applying to banks there?
It was international presence, so diversity profile. However, it was also because, remember, I was GMAT. I was taking some classes in Argentina. They were great. They were very helpful. It was amazing. However, I knew that India was the kind of the golden standard for GMAT. Maybe I would learn in that context. I would kind of improve my skill set, hone my sentence correction.
You moved to India for your GMAT score, to improve your GMAT score?
As well, diversity, international experience.
But just for your profile, your like business application profile.
Yeah, business application.
Well, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I'm asking, like, what was your thought process? Like, were your parents telling you, hey, come back to India? We have a good job here. We know people here. Were you applying online? Were you networking? We're just trying to give a sense of like what the decision-making was back then.
Decision-making was, I continue focus on standardization tests and improve my skill set there, and, take my time and get a job, get a fresh job. And I got a couple offers as well.
So did you move to India before you had an offer?
Yes, I did. I stayed with my grandparents.
Okay. And then when you're there, did you, how did you kind of start doing like your networking? Just, was it like family, close family and friends from your parents? Was it just LinkedIn? I mean, this was 2010-ish. It was still pretty rough economy. Were you like using LinkedIn? What tools were you using, if any, or was it more just like networking through relationships?
Networking through relationships, sending out 250, 300 emails a day, and LinkedIn.
Cool. And then tell me about the hit rate on those. How many like actual interviews did you land from those, thousands of emails you sent out? Did you get any like coffee chats from those? Was it like 1% conversion? Was it 5%, or any kind of estimate?
I ended up with 3 offers.
All in India, all in Mumbai?
It's 2 in Delhi, 1 in Mumbai.
Okay, cool. And what were they? I'd love to hear this. Cool.
The Nomura Investment Bank, American Express, the Standard Chartered Bank.
Cool. And tell me how you like decided what the right one was for you.
The compensation package was a prime driver of kind of how I wanted to move. The financial city, the fact that Delhi is the capital, but Mumbai is the financial city of the country. So I kind of look at Bombay for the markets.
Yeah,
those were the 2 kind of determining factors for.
I assume the pay was pretty low though, since it was in Mumbai, even though it's the capital and they pay a little bit more. I assume it's still, compared to like U.S. standards, it's probably pretty.
New York is U.S. is out of states the U.S. is number 1 geography economy in the world, the dollar.
Yeah, so like the pay was probably in the 20-ish thousand USD a year, or 40,000, something like that, 20 to 40.
Yeah, I think I don't remember what the exact package was.
Okay.
This was a pre-MBA role, and this was a banker role. So
yeah,
with base, bonus, standard comp.
So you were there for a long time at Standard Chartered.
I was there for 6 years total. 5 I was working, and 1 year I took sabbatical.
Cool. Yeah, that's a long time. I mean, that's a good run for, basically your second job right out of school, right? So tell me about like why you stayed so long, what you liked about it, what you learned. I'd love to hear about that.
Wow, I learned everything about, legal documentation, spreadsheets. I learned everything about Excel. I took courses.
Well, what group, I guess, what group or what groups were you in, and like what type of work were you doing first, maybe just to frame it a little bit?
The type of work was mostly kind of client service associates, managing due diligence from the relationship managers for the mutual fund, for FIG clients, mutual funds, banks, insurance companies, asset managers, those kinds of clients. So was managing a little bit more on that front.
Cool.
Yeah, and then I broke into the corporate finance team inside the bank. Pure
How did
playing.
you do that? A lot of people want to do that. They want to do the internal transition. Was that hard to leave your FIG group to the corporate finance group, the investment banking group?
Yes, it was. It was tough. I mean, I had to prepare myself for some senior meetings. Network, yes, but like monitor, track, progress, follow up, achieve certain points. Business school still in the back of my head, my mind, that I want to continue with business school and transition. I want to break into business school. I needed to showcase that transition. Transition was very important to me. Um, I, I finally got a boss that went to IIMA, which is one of the top business schools. I was surrounded by, the floor had 40 professionals, and out of 40 professionals, 35 of them had MBAs. And, I searched everybody up on LinkedIn. I had the full kind of CV of each one of them. I studied their careers carefully, and I realized that the MBA was important. A lot of them came from very strong undergrads as well, from IITs or in India.
And so you had that against you, so you even felt more pressure to get the right experience under your belt, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so you said you made the transition. Were you like meeting with people in the investment banking group a lot, like in trying to develop that relationship? And how did you eventually make the jump? Like who approved it?
The approvals, look, I kept on networking with first of all, like I made sure that the work was complete by doing monitoring, tracking, getting tasks assigned. And before my manager would kind of ask me or follow up with me, I would already follow up with a structured approach on where we are, how this task is going to be completed, what's the deadline, where we are with these clients, where we are with these term facilities, structured facilities, where we are with all this work. And that kind of gave me good, my operations managers, my line managers were okay. And then the managing directors also liked me because I was always first in office early in the morning, and I stayed late, and then I went and studied for the GMAT. So I was very structured.
You're working hard.
Working hard.
So tell me, it sounds like near the end of that time, you took a year to either do a startup or do kind of a sabbatical, but you stayed busy. Then when did you end up applying to schools, and what schools did you apply to? Where'd you get in? I think you had mentioned before on a call with me that you had a stint with INSEAD, but then you ended up eventually at IE. Can you tell me about what happened there? Are you willing to share that or no?
Yes. So the sabbatical, I took a sabbatical in my fifth year because I finally got my GMAT cleared through. That was part of my journey. After getting the GMAT kind of cleared through, I said, "Hey, let's go for."
When you say GMAT cleared through, I mean it's most people, at least I know on the site, they take the GMAT. It's like usually they'll do like 3-4 months of studying. It sounds like you were studying for years.
Yeah, actually, I came in and out.
You were like getting ready for it, but then you didn't feel ready, or like you weren't scoring high enough in the practice test. Is that what was happening, and you were stopping?
So the test is I was scoring very high on the quant side. I had a natural evolution that kind of made me score very well on the quant side of things. I was getting 49s, 48s, 49s, 47s. And then on the verbal side, on my best days, I was getting kind of 35s, 36s, yielding a total 700s.
Yeah.
But that was only on my best days.
Yeah. Yeah. So you weren't actually taking the official test. You were taking practice tests, or you were doing official tests and you just kept trying again, again, again.
I kept trying. I mean, like I went through.
How many times did you take it officially?
Officially, I took it a couple of times. It's not like I didn't take it once and just clear it.
There was a lot of practice tests in between there and stuff.
There was a lot. In fact, I took Manhattan GMAT had kind of come into.
I took them too. I took them too way back in the day, 2000, in New York. That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Before, I think they were part of. I think Kaplan ended up buying them, or somebody bought them. I can't remember who.
Got it.
But okay, so you were taking this, and finally, like after that time you're like, okay, this is it. I got to get the GMAT done with. You got it done. And sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying you're on sabbatical and what?
Yeah, and then I started applying for business recommendation letters. I got a couple recommendation letters. I started making the applications. I worked with an admissions consulting firm as well. They charge by the hour. They do introspection. We do strategy. I worked with an amazing consultant that kind of got me into a few business schools. I didn't apply to U.S. business schools like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, or any of those, even with the diverse profile I had. I focused more on European. I wanted a 10-month or a 12-month program for an MBA. And I applied to Hong Kong as well, but I definitely, Spain was the best for me because the language, the culture, the entrepreneurialism, the duration of the MBA course, the hedge with finance, because I wanted to try entrepreneurship a little bit, but still remain in finance and master's in focus on finance. And then throughout
I gotta say, I'm just like astounded by like it's just such an interesting profile. So like you're getting it, you got into INSEAD, right? You got into IE?
Yeah. So actually I got, so when I applied for my MBA, I got accepted into IE. I went to IE, and when I was taking the MBA class, I was performing well academically. It was on an investment competition. Then I applied to INSEAD for a master's in finance program.
Oh, master's in finance. Got it. So you were doing the MBA and you wanted to stack it with a master's in finance too.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So like you love school.
It's not like I'm a collector. I just wanted to, beef up this formation.
Like, don't you feel like the MBA, like most of the value in the MBA or a master's program, or at least for soft master's programs, a lot of it's like the network you're building and the recruiting that happens on campus. Do you agree with that, or you feel like you're really learning a lot too?
I was learning a lot. The objection was that I still, for Spain, I don't have the residence. So without the residence, it's difficult for me to compete for a job when you have French, Spaniards, and British kind of bankers and financial service people in the industry. So it's very difficult to get a job in those banks, and you start off at different roles, and it was more attractive for me to hone up on the INSEAD and then use that network plus the network from my MBA to get any offer.
So you're at IE. Yeah, so you're at IE, you're kind of going through the schooling, and then it's a 12-month or a 14-month?
It was 10 to 12 months.
10 to 12 months. So you're starting that. And are you recruiting right away? You start talking, were you looking at like consulting still, investment banking?
Banking, private equity.
Tell me about those. Yeah, tell me about those interviews. What was it like? Was it hard? Was it unexpected? Were you ready? Was it a disaster? Tell me what happened.
Not getting that much traction. Then focused on the top academic. In the peer set, when doing an MBA, they want the top percentile of academic performance, like the Baker Scholar of the program.
Right.
Yeah. So with that, they kept on going for those profiles, and the objection kept kind of being a detriment in my profile. So I just focused more on INSEAD valuation, a lot of academic work, time spent in silence and studying valuation and Damodaran, and kind of focused on EV, reading some books on Excel and modeling and quant and different, from the present value to Black-Scholes to. So
were you like not concerned about, like you were trying for the jobs, but you weren't like panicked about not having a job?
I wasn't panicked. But I definitely, the financial. I was entrepreneurship, and I got a small facility, a debt facility in the European Union from a bank. Since I was a banker, I knew how to talk to the banks. So cost of funds was a little bit attractive, and I could try my project, And I engaged in my own project. It wasn't that successful, but
Mhm.
it was relatively a
So
good experience.
you were doing a startup as well on the side.
A startup as well, yes.
And what was this startup? Do you mind just giving a quick 20-second?
MBA admissions consultancy.
Okay.
Uh, wanted to see if I could, manage some MBA clients. So it was a little transitioning from finance. It was not the best education, the best experience I had, but it was new. I wanted to try that.
Okay. So you learned from that. It didn't go so well. Did you have to pay the bank back, or was it forgiven?
Have to pay the bank back. Yes,
Yeah. How much? Do you mind sharing how much the loan was for?
15K.
Okay, it's not too bad. It's not like it's not like 100,000 or something. Okay, and so you took that loan mostly to help start the company up and all that stuff.
Yes, incorporate. Correct.
Got it. Okay, and then so that kind of closed down. You did end up taking classes at INSEAD as well, is what you're saying?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
I
and
took.
then you're coming out. You graduate from IE, and again, are you in the position of you don't have a role coming out of graduation, and what's your thought process at this, or you had landed your role?
Well, I talked to my dad and I told him, hey, can you sponsor some of my MBA debt, my MFin debt? My for INSEAD, can you pay up something? So he said, I'll help you with something. So we used that, and then I tried to refinance myself with banks and fintechs and so on and so forth, but I couldn't leverage more. And the moratorium for the MBA loan was also gonna kind of come up to its curve. So I was pretty leveraged.
Yeah,
And
how
then I
bad
had
was your MBA debt? How high was it?
100K
Pounds?
euros
Euros.
or
Yeah.
US dollars. US dollars.
US dollars. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot. Um, and so what did you do? What are you thinking? Like, oh no, like I'm screwed, or what? How are you approaching this? You just start networking and interviewing like crazy, or what happened?
No, I still didn't. I didn't pick it up so well. I dropped out of school at INSEAD, and I went
But
back to.
you finished with IE, right?
I finished. I completed my MBA. Yes.
Yeah. You finished IE, but INSEAD, you're like, hey, I gotta stop.
Yes.
And why? Was it just like I gotta find a job? What was the thought process there?
Gotta look for some opportunity.
Some income. Yeah. Okay. And so what was the path? How long did it take?
I went back to Argentina and I started networking, and sending out emails, and I networked my way into a job in finance, private equity. I was interviewed 5 rounds for Mercado Libre. I was interviewed 5 rounds for JP Morgan, 5 rounds for different positions here, and
It didn't turn out. Didn't.
it didn't turn out because the compensation was not, it was in local currency when I had opportunities to work for US clients at different currency rates.
So can you tell me like what the offer was? It was like in Buenos Aires. It was in pesos or whatever, or in
Yes. Offers, I don't have a lot of details on that, but what I can tell you is that I started assistant of, and I just prepared an investment presentation, a deck. I started working for $300 a month.
and this was is this at the private equity fund?
The private equity fund.
So you were like, just give me a chance, whatever. Like I'll make it. I'll do a great job. So you start out like helping with decks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Financial models, investment presentation.
Okay. And so this is can you tell me more about like the private equity fund? What's the model like in terms of like, what the role was like initially and how it's evolved now that you've been there for a little over 4 years?
Yes. So initially, when we just started, we were kind of, it was a small team. Headcount is low traditionally in these firms, so kind of sending out a lot of emails to investors, sending out legal documentation.
You're trying to help raise a fund.
Help raise a fund, yes.
So you guys didn't have, so it was a new startup fund. You guys didn't have any capital, any AUM. You're just working for what, like the founders or something?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And how long did it take to actually close on your first fund, or was it more family office money and you had money, you're just trying to supplement it?
No, I think in 3 months we had closed down on 3-4 deals.
Okay.
we raised a couple $1 million.
And so the actual deal sizes were pretty small though, like sub
Deal
one.
size, yeah, sub 1 million,
Yeah.
sub 1 million, 1-2 million, sub 5, yeah.
Yeah, and so were these deals that were in mostly Buenos Aires, or were they in the US? Or tell me the types of deals you guys are doing.
USA and India. For India, one deal that we worked on was Paytm. It's a fintech company. It's the largest IPO, I believe, in the Indian market when it happened. For US,
So you guys were an advisor. Were you doing banking work, or were you doing actual investment work? Like, you weren't putting money to work then, you were serving as an advisor?
our advisor, yes.
So you're doing banking, you're kind of doing banking work. It wasn't really private equity, it was investment banking work, advisory work.
Advisory. So I was doing banking work. I was the banker,
Yeah.
and I was doing more of the banking work. Yeah, banking operations.
So when did you guys raise a fund to start investing in the small? Or you guys always had that? You're doing both. You're doing some work where you're actually investing out of a fund, and then you had advisory work as well.
Yeah, so I started off as assistant, and then after assistant, I grew up. I started hiring people. Manager, became a manager. Continued my work, honed in on banking, honed in on operations, and honed in on private equity. The more financial and investment in credit markets, stock markets, and fixed income, and any markets, that's taken care of by the team in the US.
Okay, so what are you doing day to day? Like, what are you evaluating? What are you managing? What are you operating now for the team?
So we're managing a team of 10 plus people, working on the banking, which entails the treasury as well as the accounting for the company, and liaison.
So like almost like a CFO type role, would you say?
CFO type role. I would say CFO type role is accurate.
Okay, so it's like the support function for the private equity fund that's running out of the US. They have you and a team of 10 down in Buenos Aires helping with more like the accounting of the fund, that type of stuff.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So you guys aren't actually like the ones looking at deals, or do you help with deal sourcing and deal evaluation as well?
No, deal sourcing and looking at deals and deal evaluation, I don't take care of.
Okay.
Somebody. Yes.
Okay, so that's up in the US mostly, or do they have a separate team for that?
It's in the USA. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So tell me about do you like the role, or are you learning, or do you feel like there's room for growth for you?
I believe there's, I'm learning on every day. I've held up for the last 4 years at my desk. I like markets. I like learning more about markets and deals and evaluation and, understanding the US markets every day.
Yeah.
And I enjoy my role. I want to become a strong CFO, manage liquidity mismatches, working capital, be smart at these mathematical equations to see how capital can compound for our investors.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. Any kind of final last words of wisdom, kind of looking back at your winding path? We got you eventually made it back home to Buenos Aires, but you're Argentina, US, UK, Madrid, India, Spain. Sorry, I already said Spain. India, Spain, back to Buenos Aires. So it's a very cool path, very interesting. Any kind of final words of wisdom looking back at that?
No words of wisdom. I think I really respect Wall Street Oasis. It's really one of a nice forum. So I appreciate your work. I like your work.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with the listeners, and let's stay in touch.
Let's stay in touch. Thank you.
And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.